The transmission crackled through subspace, its alien harmonics setting teeth on edge across every military installation on Earth. Ambassador Velthara of the Dominion hegemony materialized as a hologram in the United Earth Command Center, her. 6 arms spread in what humans had learned was a gesture of supreme authority among her kind. Insignificant Terra. Her voice resonated through universal translators, each word dripping with millennia of assumed superiority. Your species has expanded beyond your designated boundaries. The hegemony has decided your fate. Admiral Corvin Dregmore stood at attention before the projection, his weathered face betraying nothing as the alien continued her pronouncement. Behind him, the command staff of Earth's greatest military minds watched with barely contained tension. You will provide tribute equivalent to 60% of your planetary resources annually, or face the consequences of defying powers that have ruled the galaxy since before your ancestors crawled from primordial mud. Velthara's compound eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. You have 7 rotations of your insignificant star to comply. The hologram flickered and died, leaving the command center in stunned silence. General Nick Shadowheart, Earth's youngest 3-star general, was the first to speak. 60%, she said, her voice deadly calm. They want us to starve our own people to feed their empire. It's not about resources, Admiral Dregmore replied, turning to face the assembled officers. It's about submission. They've done this to every species they've encountered for the past 10,000 years. Commander Zephyr Voidwalker, head of the Stellar Defense Initiative, pulled up a holographic display showing the extent of hegemony. Space. Intelligence suggests they control roughly 40% of the galaxy, over 600 subjugated species, all paying tribute. And if we refuse? Asked Dr. Lyra Stormweaver, Earth's chief xenobiologist and strategic advisor. Then they send their armadas. Velthara's voice echoed from the speakers. Apparently, she had left a recording. The same armadas that turned the crystal cities of Morpheus Prime into glass, that reduced the ocean worlds of the Cathari to boiling vapor. Comply, or join the monuments of the defiant dead. The room fell silent again, but Admiral Dregmore felt something stirring in his chest. Not fear, but something far more dangerous. Pride. The same pride that had carried humanity from caves to the stars, that had made them the first species to colonize beyond their home system within 3 centuries of achieving spaceflight. Admiral, General Shadowheart said quietly, what are your orders? Dregmore looked around the room at these. Representatives of humanity's finest, brilliant minds from every continent, every culture, united by their refusal to kneel. He thought of the families in the colonies, the children playing in the gardens of New Geneva Station, the terraforming crews turning dead worlds into gardens of life. Send a message to every fleet commander, every station chief, every colonial. Governor, he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. 7 days, they said. In 7 days, they'll have their answer. He paused, allowing his gaze to sweep across each face in the room. Begin Operation Prometheus Rising. If the Dominion hegemony wants to know what humanity's answer is to their ultimatum, they'll find out the hard way. We didn't claw our way to the stars to bow to anyone. The silence that followed was electric with possibility and purpose. Earth's children were going to war. Within hours of Admiral Dregmore's declaration, every human settlement from the Mercury Mining Collective to the Titan research stations buzzed with unprecedented activity. The Sol system transformed into a hive of controlled chaos as humanity's industrial might pivoted toward a single purpose: preparation for the impossible. Captain Raven Nightforge stood on the observation deck of the Olympus shipyards, watching thousands of workers swarm over. The skeletal frames of warships that had existed only as blueprints 48 hours ago. The yards, originally designed to build exploration vessels and cargo haulers, now resonated with the thunder of military construction. The Prometheus-class dreadnoughts are ahead of schedule, reported Chief Engineer Axel Ironhand, his augmented reality display showing construction timelines that would have been considered fantasy by any other species. We'll have the first squadron ready in 5 days. 5 days to build ships that should take years? Captain Nightforge shook her head in amazement. How? Distributed manufacturing across the entire system, Ironhand explained, his enthusiasm barely contained. Every station, every asteroid mining platform, every colonial fabrication unit working in perfect synchronization. The AI coordination networks Luna developed are processing supply chains in real time across 47 worlds. The scale was staggering. Mars had converted its atmospheric processors into munitions factories. The asteroid belt mining consortiums were flash-forging hull plating faster than raw materials could be delivered. Europa's bio-research facilities were mass-producing the exotic energy cells that would power humanity's new weapons. What about personnel? Nightforge asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Every retired military officer from the colonial wars has volunteered for reactivation, came the voice of General Marcus Voidstorm, approaching from the lift. Every merchant captain with deep space experience has requested combat training. We've got applications from 14-year-olds lying about their age to join the fleet. The general's weathered face showed a mixture of pride and concern. The problem isn't finding people willing to fight, Captain. It's choosing which of them to leave behind to protect the home systems. Through the massive viewport, they watched as the first completed Prometheus-class vessel, the UES Defiant Dawn, moved away from its construction cradle. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, sleek lines that spoke of speed, armored hull sections that promised durability, and weapon arrays that radiated lethal purpose. Sir, a communications officer approached. Admiral Dregmore requests your presence in strategic planning. We've received intelligence from the outer colonies. The trio made their way to the secure briefing room, where Admiral Dregmore stood, before a three-dimensional tactical display showing hegemony fleet movements. The hologram was beautiful and terrifying. Thousands of alien vessels arranged in formations that spoke of millennia of military perfection. The hegemony is mobilizing, Dregmore announced without preamble. Long-range sensors show their battle fleets moving toward our space. They're not waiting for the deadline. Dr. Quantum Meridian, Earth's leading expert in alien technology, stepped forward. We've analyzed their formation patterns from historical conflicts. They're bringing roughly 2,000 vessels, standard suppression force for rebellious species. 2,000 ships, General Voidstorm mused, against what we can field in 7 days. The numbers don't matter, Admiral Dregmore said with quiet conviction. Every species they've conquered thought in terms of numbers. The hegemony expects us to surrender when we see their armada, just like every other race has done for 10,000 years. Captain Nightforge studied the tactical display, noting the perfect order of the alien fleet. They've never faced opposition, have they? Not real opposition. Exactly, Dregmore confirmed. They're used to intimidation tactics working. They've forgotten how to fight an enemy that fights back. The room filled with the quiet confidence that had carried humanity through every dark moment in their history. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy with technological advantages. Built over millennia, none of that mattered. Humanity had never learned how to quit. The fifth day dawned with Sol blazing down on the largest military formation in human history. Admiral Dregmore stood in the command center of the UES Sovereign Will, humanity's newest flagship, watching as vessels from across the solar system took their positions in the battle formation. "Fleet status report," he commanded, though the sight before him already told the story. 237 vessels reporting ready for combat, announced Fleet Coordinator Seraph Voidhawk from her station. Prometheus-class dreadnoughts, Hercules-class heavy cruisers, Raptor-class destroyers, and Phoenix-class frigates, plus support vessels, Through the viewport, the assembled fleet stretched across millions of kilometers of space, a constellation of human engineering and determination that had materialized from blueprints and raw will in less than a week. Each ship bore the scars of rapid construction, but also the marks of perfection born from desperate purpose. "Commander Eclipse Starfall reporting fleet weapon status," came a voice over the communications array. "All vessels are armed with Mark 7 plasma batteries, quantum torpedo arrays, and the new Helios beam systems. Dr. Meridian's team has exceeded all expectations." Admiral Dregmore nodded grimly. The Helios beams were humanity's ace in the hole. Energy weapons that combined human nuclear physics with captured hegemony power coupling technology. They existed because humanity had refused to simply reverse engineer alien technology, instead improving upon it with characteristic human stubbornness. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Nova Darkstar from the sensor station, "hegemony fleet detected at the edge of the system. They're massive." The tactical display shifted to show the approaching alien force. Where humanity had assembled hundreds of vessels, the hegemony brought thousands. Their ships were elegant, ancient things, each one a work of art that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. They moved with the precision of entities that had never known defeat. Their broadcasting, communications reported. "Put it through," Dregmore ordered. Ambassador Velthara appeared again, but this time she was flanked by figures that could only be war commanders. "Humans," her voice carried a note of surprised disdain. "You have chosen poorly. Your primitive fleet cannot stand against the might of the hegemony. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." The transmission cut, leaving the command center in tense silence. "Admiral," General Shadowheart's voice came from the marine assault transports. "The hegemony is requesting permission to board and accept our surrender." Dregmore looked around his bridge, seeing the faces of humanity's finest staring back at him. These were the descendants of explorers and pioneers, of soldiers and scientists who had refused to accept limitations. They had come from a world that had nearly destroyed itself, learned from those mistakes, and reached for the stars with hands still dirty from building their own civilization. "Fleet-wide communication," he ordered. "All ships." The communication arrays crackled to life, carrying his voice to every human vessel in the formation. "People of Earth," he began, his voice steady and clear. "Today we face an enemy that has ruled the galaxy through fear for 10,000 years. They expect us to surrender because every other species in their experience has done so. They believe we will kneel because kneeling is all they have known from the lesser races." He paused, letting his words sink in across the fleet. "They're wrong. We are the children of a world that taught us to fight for every breath, every step forward, every dream we've ever dared to dream. We didn't come to the stars to bow to bullies. We came to make the galaxy a better place." The tactical display showed hegemony vessels moving into attack formation, their weapons charging with alien energies that had reduced civilizations to memory. "Today, we show them what humanity really means," Dregmore concluded. "All ships, battle. Stations, let's give the galaxy something new to remember." Across the human fleet, weapons powered up with the fury of a species that had never learned the meaning of surrender. The battle began with the kind of silence that exists only in space, the terrible quiet before violence reshapes the universe. The hegemony fleet approached in their traditional formation, a display of overwhelming force designed to shatter enemy morale before the first shot was fired. Admiral Dregmore watched from the bridge of the Sovereign Will as the alien vessels drew within optimal firing range. Around him, his bridge crew worked with the focused intensity of professionals who understood that the next few hours would determine humanity's future. "Hegemony fleet is broadcasting their final ultimatum," reported Lieutenant Darkstar. "Ignore it," Dregmore replied calmly. "Captain Nightforge, status on the Prometheus squadron?" "Standing by for your orders, Admiral," came the reply from the dreadnought Defiant Dawn. "All weapons charged and ready." The hegemony vessels began their approach maneuver, a complex dance of positioning that had intimidated species across the galaxy. Their ships moved with practiced precision, energy shields, shimmering like soap bubbles around hulls that had never known defeat. "Sir," Seraph Voidhawk reported from her tactical station, "they're following standard intimidation pattern 7. Our intelligence files show they've used this formation against every species they've subjugated. Then they won't expect what comes next." Dregmore smiled grimly. "All ships, execute starburst formation. Show them what happens when you threaten humanity's children." The human fleet exploded into motion with choreographed precision that caught the hegemony completely off guard. Instead of maintaining defensive positions, the smaller, faster human vessels scattered in patterns that maximized their mobility, while maintaining coordinated fire lanes. "What are they doing?" came a translated transmission from the hegemony flagship. "This is not standard defensive positioning." Admiral Velthara's voice cut through the communications with sharp confusion. "Humans, you are not following proper battle protocols. How do you expect to surrender if you scatter your forces?" "Fire," Dregmore said quietly. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Plasma batteries that had been designed to mine asteroids now carved through alien shields with brutal efficiency. Quantum torpedoes, originally intended for deep space exploration, detonated against hegemony hulls with nuclear fury. And the Helios beams, Dr. Meridian's masterpieces, sliced through enemy vessels like swords through silk. The first hegemony ship to die was a cruiser that had participated in the destruction of 47 worlds. It simply ceased to exist, vaporized by concentrated human firepower that struck from angles the aliens had never bothered to defend. "Impossible!" Velthara's voice carried across the communications. "Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields." But they could, and they were. The human fleet moved like a school of predatory fish, each vessel supporting the others while maintaining independence of action. When hegemony forces tried to concentrate their fire, they found their targets had already moved. When they attempted to pursue, they discovered that human ships could accelerate in ways that violated their understanding of safe space combat. Commander Eclipse Starfall's voice crackled across the fleet communications. "They're built for intimidation, not adaptation. They've forgotten how to fight an enemy that fights back." The hegemony began to respond with the overwhelming firepower that had reduced civilizations to ash, but their targeting systems couldn't lock on to the human vessels. Ships that should have been destroyed by direct hits were still firing, protected by shield technologies that combined human ingenuity with improved alien power systems. "Hegemony fleet is taking casualties," reported Nova Darkstar, her voice tight with excitement. 7 vessels destroyed, 15 heavily damaged. "And our losses?" Dregmore asked, though he dreaded the answer. 3 destroyers damaged. 1 frigate with hull breaches," came the report. "No vessels lost." The impossible was happening. Humanity was winning. On the hegemony flagship, Ambassador Velthara stared at tactical displays that showed something that hadn't happened in 10,000 years. Her forces were being defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Around her, officers who had never known anything but victory began to experience something alien to their culture: doubt. "All ships," she commanded, her voice carrying the edge of desperation. "Concentrate fire on their flagship. End this quickly." But the human fleet had anticipated this response. As hegemony vessels converged on the sovereign will, they found themselves facing the fury of every human ship in the formation. The concentrated firepower that had destroyed worlds met the coordinated defense of a species that had learned warfare from the crucible of their own violent history. The galaxy was about to learn what human really meant. The battle had raged for 3 hours when Ambassador Velthara realized her 10,000-year-old empire was facing something unprecedented. An enemy that grew stronger as the fight continued. The hegemony fleet, designed to crush opposition through overwhelming displays of force, was being systematically dismantled by humans who treated impossible odds as merely another problem to solve. "Status report," Velthara demanded from the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around her, officers who had never experienced genuine combat tried to process tactical data that defied millennia of military doctrine. 73 vessels destroyed, Admiral," reported her tactical coordinator, his voice shaking with disbelief. "The humans! They're not fighting like any species we've encountered. They're adapting in real time." Through the viewport, Velthara watched human ships weave between her formations like deadly dancers, their movements synchronized yet unpredictable. Every time her forces adjusted their tactics, the humans had already shifted to counter the counter. It was as if they were fighting an enemy that could read their minds. On the bridge of the Sovereign Will, Admiral Dregmore coordinated the human response with the calm precision that had made him Earth's finest naval commander. "Captain Nightforge, your Prometheus squadron is free to execute Hammer Strike Protocol. Commander Starfall, take your destroyers around their left flank. General Voidstorm, begin marine boarding operations on any hegemony vessel that shows shield failure." The battle plan flowed with organic precision. Unlike the hegemony's rigid hierarchical command structure, the human fleet operated with distributed decision-making that allowed individual captains to respond to local conditions while maintaining overall strategic coherence. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Darkstar, "we're intercepting hegemony communications. They're requesting reinforcements from their home territories." "Let them," Dregmore replied. "By the time help arrives, there won't be anyone left to reinforce." The Prometheus-class dreadnoughts moved into position, their massive Helios beam arrays tracking toward the hegemony flagship. These weapons represented humanity's greatest achievement, energy systems that channeled the power of stellar cores through focusing arrays that could slice through any known material. "Targeting the Eternal Dominion," reported Captain Nightforge. "All Prometheus-class vessels reporting ready to fire." "Wait for my mark," Dregmore ordered, watching as the hegemony flagship desperately tried to coordinate its remaining escort vessels. "Let them bunch up first." The alien vessels moved into protective formation around their command ship, exactly as human tactical doctrine had predicted they would. 47 escort vessels clustering around their flagship, shields overlapping in patterns that had protected hegemony fleets for millennia. "Now," Dregmore said quietly. 6 Helios beams lanced across space simultaneously, each one carrying the concentrated fury of a small star. The hegemony shields, designed to deflect energy weapons they understood, simply ceased to exist. The beams passed through the defensive formations like light through glass, each one finding a different target. The Eternal Dominion's shields collapsed under the assault, but Velthara's flagship was built to survive. Its hull, forged from exotic materials harvested from the cores of dead stars, absorbed the punishment that would have vaporized lesser vessels. "Impossible," she whispered, watching her escort fleet die around her. "Our shields are impenetrable. Our hulls are indestructible. How are they doing this?" The answer came from her own science officer, his voice hollow with shock. "Admiral, their weapons aren't just improved versions of ours. They've combined our technology with principles we don't understand. These humans, they think differently than we do." On a dozen human vessels, General Voidstorm's Marines were already boarding disabled hegemony ships. The aliens discovered that humans didn't just fight differently in space, their ground combat was equally terrifying. Marines who moved with mechanical precision, using weapons that combined brute force with tactical sophistication. "Hegemony fleet is attempting to withdraw," reported Seraph Voidhawk. "Remaining vessels are breaking formation." "Pursuit course," Dregmore ordered. "No survivors return to report our capabilities to the hegemony core worlds. Today, the galaxy learns that humanity doesn't negotiate with bullies." The human fleet reformed into pursuit configuration, their ships accelerating with thrust-to-weight ratios that violated everything the hegemony understood about safe space travel. Human vessels built for exploration had been converted to warships that could outrun anything in the galaxy while maintaining devastating firepower. "Admiral," came Captain Nightforge's voice across the communications, "the Eternal Dominion is trying to jump to hyperspace." "Stop them," Dregmore replied. "Use the gravity mines." Humanity's response to hegemony, faster-than-light travel, had been characteristically direct. If the enemy wanted to run away, make running impossible. The gravity mines activated around the alien flagship, creating localized distortions that prevented hyperspace entry. Ambassador Velthera found herself trapped in a situation no hegemony commander had faced in recorded history. Alone, outgunned, and facing an enemy that refused to offer quarter. The tide hadn't just turned. The ocean itself had changed. The final act began with Ambassador Velthera's surrender broadcast echoing across both fleets. The first time in 10,000 years that a hegemony commander had spoken those words. Her flagship, the Eternal Dominion, hung dead in space, its weapon systems destroyed and its once proud hull scarred by humanity's fury. Admiral Dregmore stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Will, watching as the last hegemony vessels either surrendered or fled toward the outer rim of the solar system. The human fleet had accomplished something the galaxy had deemed impossible. They had broken the Dominion hegemony's aura of invincibility. "Fleet status report," he ordered, though victory felt surreal after millennia of alien oppression that humanity had witnessed through refugee testimonies. 14 vessels damaged, 2 destroyers requiring major repairs, reported Seraph Voidhawk. No ships lost, estimated hegemony casualties, 237 vessels destroyed or captured. The numbers were staggering, but Dregmore understood that the real victory went far beyond the tactical. News of this battle would spread across the galaxy through the vast network of subjugated species that the hegemony had controlled for eons. For the first time in galactic history, the oppressed would know that their oppressors could bleed. "Sir," Lieutenant Darkstar announced, "we're receiving communications from across the galaxy, multiple species, all asking the same question. Put them through," Dregmore ordered. The communications array lit up with transmissions from dozens of worlds, the crystal singers of Avalon Prime, the deep-sea philosophers of Oceanus, the hive minds of the Kepler Collective. Species that had paid tribute to the hegemony for generations were asking a question that none had dared whisper before. How? Dr. Quantum Meridian stepped forward from her science station. "Admiral, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout hegemony space. Their forces are consolidating around their core worlds." "They're scared," General Shadowheart observed, with satisfaction. For the first time in their history, they're afraid. Captain Nightforge's voice crackled over the communications from the Defiant Dawn. "Sir, what are your orders regarding the hegemony survivors?" Dregmore looked at the tactical display showing the few remaining alien vessels, their weapons powered down and their crews awaiting human judgment. These were beings who had participated in the subjugation of entire civilizations, yet they were also soldiers following orders from an empire that had existed since before human civilization began. "Offer them a choice," he said finally. "They can return to their masters with a message, or they can join the coalition we're about to build." The message he had in mind was simple. The age of tribute was over. The galaxy now had protectors who couldn't be intimidated, couldn't be bought, and refused to kneel to anyone. Over the following hours, as human ships helped repair damaged hegemony vessels and treated wounded prisoners with medical care superior to anything their own empire provided, a transformation began. Alien crew members who had expected execution or enslavement instead encountered humans who offered food, medical treatment, and something unprecedented in their experience: respect for defeated enemies. Commander Eclipse Starfall reported from the captured hegemony vessels. "Sir, we're getting..." Intelligence on hegemony military doctrine, fleet positions, and subjugated world locations. These beings want to help us. They've never seen conquerors who didn't rape and pillage, General Voidstorm observed. We're changing their entire understanding of what power means. The final transmission came from Ambassador Velthara herself, speaking from the medical bay where human doctors were treating injuries her own people would have ignored. "Admiral Dregmore," she said, her voice carrying a tone of bewildered respect. "My species has ruled through fear for 10,000 years. We believed that power came from the ability to destroy, but you have shown us something we had forgotten existed." "What's that?" Dregmore asked. "Honor," she replied. "You could have destroyed us completely. Instead, you offer mercy to enemies who showed you none. This is not the behavior of primitives. This is the conduct of a species that deserves to lead." The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the sovereign will in contemplative silence. Through the viewport, they could see human ships forming up alongside vessels from a dozen other species, former hegemony subjects who had monitored the battle and decided to join the victors. "Admiral," came a new voice over the communications. "Captain, Zara Voidweaver of the exploration vessel, Distant Horizon. Long-range sensors are detecting massive subspace transmissions. The entire galaxy is talking about what happened here." Dregmore nodded, understanding the implications. Word would spread to every oppressed world, every subjugated species, every civilization that had been forced to kneel before hegemony might. They would learn that resistance was possible, that bullies could be defeated, and that somewhere in the galaxy, there were beings who fought for justice rather than conquest. "All ships," he announced across the fleet communications, "prepare for extended operations. We're not going home yet." General Shadowheart raised an eyebrow. "Sir?" Dregmore smiled, the expression carrying the quiet confidence that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. "The galaxy just learned that Earth doesn't flinch when threatened. Now it's time to teach them what we do to bullies who threaten others." The human fleet began forming up for deeper space operations, their hulls still bearing the scars of battle, but their weapons ready for the greater war to come. Behind them, the Sol system continued its work, now building ships not just for Earth's defense, but for the liberation of every world that had suffered under hegemony rule. The tribute collectors had finally met their match. The galaxy would never be the same. In the depths of space, humanity's Armada moved toward the stars, carrying with them the hopes of 600 subjugated species and the promise that the age of oppression was ending. Earth hadn't just answered the ultimatum. They had rewritten the rules of galactic civilization itself.